Africa's Legacy in the Imminent Fall of the West, a drama of exploitation, lies and an emerging future. Introduction. At a time when the world is held together by invisible threads of dependence, the drama of the West and its relationship with Africa reveals itself as an emotional tragedy. The Legacy of Africa and the Impending Fall of the West takes an unforgiving look at the dark sides of history, exposes lies and raises the question, is the West trapped in its own history and dependent on Africa? Act 1, Historical Handcuffs. The stage opens with a look at the historical interconnection between the West and Africa. This relationship has lasted for centuries, since the days of ancient Egypt. But instead of a harmonious symbiosis, a pattern of exploitation and oppression emerges. How deep are the roots of this dependence and what secrets are hidden in past centuries? Act 2, The Actors of the Present. Figures like Bill Gates and the Rothschilds appear on stage, once spreaders of disease, who are now trying to create a new image for themselves in the fields of Africa. But behind the scenes, Russia, India, Arabia and China are plotting their own roles in Africa's rise and exploration. The West, once self-proclaimed overlord, is now faced with impending doom. What role do black ministers play in Italy and how is the political and economic scenario shaped? Act 3, The Truth Comes Out. The production takes a dark turn when the truth about the West's historical tyrants is revealed. Napoleon, Caesar and Alexander the Great, once acclaimed as heroes, reveal their violent and bestial nature. The history books that glorified these monsters are being exposed as part of a larger lie. How far does the manipulation of history go and who are the real heroes? Act 4, The Impending Collapse. The stage shows a West that threatens to collapse under its own weight. The industry is too expensive, resources are exhausted and money is printed as if there is no tomorrow. Wars rage everywhere, while the soil of Europe and Asia is exhausted. The grim forecast for the future is becoming clear. How can the West escape its own decline and what role does Africa play in this process? Act 5, The Revolt of the Oppressed. The stage turns into a place of revolt. Black artists and lifeguards, forgotten in the shadows of history, are rising up. The dramatic production shows how these actors have already caused changes behind the scenes. What stories of heroism and rescue remain untold and how can they influence the fate of the future? Final, A Call for Change. The curtain falls as a call for change echoes through the audience. The drama reveals that the future does not just depend on destiny, but on people's actions. How can we prepare the ground for a more just world and will the West rethink its history before falling into the abyss? Final reflections summarize the findings and look to the future. An appeal calls on people to take responsibility for a more just world. How can we ensure that this change is not just temporary, but that it brings lasting change for future generations? Western challenges and the search for solutions. The West faces internal challenges, from political instability to economic uncertainty. But amid these challenges, the idea of a new collaborative partnership with Africa offers hope. However, questions inevitably arise. To what extent are these efforts supported by an authentic desire for change and how can historical mistakes be avoided? The role of civil society will be crucial. How can people around the world exert pressure to ensure that policymakers truly create sustainable partnerships with Africa and do not return to old ways? The rise of diversity and its social impact. The growing influence of Black people in politics, science, and business sends a clear message of change. But the question remains, are these changes superficial or is the global community truly taking a step forward towards equality? The challenge is not just to accept diversity, but to actively promote it. How can education systems, media and political institutions help break down barriers and create a truly inclusive society? The fascinating history between the West and Africa ranges from the impressive civilizations of antiquity to the devastating shadows of the colonial era. Slavery, exploitation and cultural appropriation leave deep scars. How can we accurately reflect this past while paving the way for an inclusive and equitable future? The focus is on cultural identity, which has been shaped by centuries of encounters with the West. How can we promote an authentic appreciation of cultural diversity while at the same time taking action against cultural exploitation? Africa's Awakening, the Collapse of the West. In my dramatic work, The Awakening of Africa, I focus on the profound changes in the global power structure and the emerging reality that overshadows the decline of the West. Africa, once seen as an arch-hostile continent, is becoming the scene of changes of historic proportions. Act 1: The West's Historical Dependence on Africa. Since the times of ancient Egypt, the West has depended on the knowledge and work of Africans. This dependence continued over the centuries, with Africans fighting in wars and contributing their knowledge. It is now becoming clear that the West cannot survive without Africa. Act 2: Africa's Resistance to Exploitation. Industry giants like Bill Gates and the Rothschilds, once instrumental in spreading disease in Africa, are now trying to farm. Resistance to exploitation is growing as Russians, Indians, Arabs and Chinese invest in Africa, profiting from Western hatred and slavery. Africa becomes the center of the global economy as the West loses power. Act 3: The Rise of Black People in the World. Black is becoming the color of power in politics, science, media and commerce. Black people are making a significant contribution to the changing landscape. The world is recognizing the true importance of black artists and lifeguards. Africa is seen as a beacon of hope for the world. Act 4: The Decline of the West. The Western world is in crisis. Politicians like Macron and Baerbock are failing, France and America are being expelled from many countries. The industry is too expensive, resources are exhausted and money is printed as if there is no tomorrow. Wars that no one needs to eat within Western society. Final act: A call to rethink. The future of newborn generations is at stake. Politicians and scientists no longer have a plan. Humanity must act before it is too late. The West must open up and give Africa a chance, otherwise the world will face a dark fate. The Third World War is imminent, driven by a Western mentality that lives war and always fights for it. Only rethinking can avoid imminent disaster. This dramatic work explores the dark sides of global history while calling for change and collaboration.